take you through some of the things that have got me to have the year that I've had since I last saw you when I left the group February. And it's lovely to see so many familiar faces, many from OBCN and some from further afield, like Carol and Stu and Laurie, who have and Claire, who have joined from further afield. There is a lot to cover, and I'm not going to have time to do it all. So what I've done is I've put together a little two-sheeter thing, which Mike has just shared to the group, which will give you something to take away at the end. You might be relieved to know that I'm not going to just do 30 minutes of my holiday slides, which might be particularly annoying. For those who don't know me, I was a member of OBCN for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years ago, and got to know, and SOBN, and got to know a lot of the people in the room. And they will all tell you that all I ever did was bang on about the fact that I was 18 months away from retiring, 17 months away from retiring, 15 months away from retiring, wherever it was. And I had this amazing spreadsheet which planned my retirement early, so I retired at the age of 48. And the first thing I want to report is that absolutely nothing that was in the spreadsheet has happened, almost literally. So best laid plans and things. So therefore, my talk is not really about planning and the detail, although I believe in that, and we will talk about that. It's more about choices, because although what I intended to happen hasn't happened, other brilliant stuff has, and that's happened because I had the choice to do what I've done over the last year or so. What I'm going to talk about is the choices I made, and those choices I believe were right for me. They may not be right for you, so don't get hung up on what I've done. Ted, for example, we've had many a conversation about the fact that he enjoys working in his 70s, and I wanted to stop when I'm 48. It's not about doing what I've done, but hopefully the how I've done it, rather than what I've done, will be useful to people. The other thing I would say is that I was a business coach for the best part of 20 years, and what I'm going to share with you, I think, applies equally to your business as it does to your life. And so bear that in mind. It might be that you don't need to take any lessons in terms of your life, but it might be useful to take some of those lessons for your business. The intention is to talk about 3 or 4 of these kind of 10 points that I've had in a little bit more detail, and just give you some ideas. And then we'll open it up for questions, and make sure that if you've got anything you want to share with, to ask of me, then I can answer it. The legal bit, I suppose, is anything about as follow is financial advice. There are financial advisors in the room, and they're qualified to give that advice, and I'm not. So this is advice about finances. It is not financial advice, okay? And it's just my story. The best advice I can share is to learn enough so that when you go and talk to Jess or AD or any of the other financial advisors in the room, you understand what you need to ask and what they're answering, so that you're in a position of understanding. That would be the best advice to give. So really, in terms of thinking about what I was going to share with you, my passion in life is that people have choices. In my early life, I didn't have choices. I thought it was like not to have choices, and decided I didn't like it. And so my adult life has been determined to ensure that I was in a position of choice. And that is really what I want to share with you today, is how can you put yourself in a position of choice, whether that be about working or what work you do. I've just been in the chat room with Billy with the wildlife walks in Goring. Fantastic story where they've decided they really want to do what they want to do, and they've done a business that many of us might not have thought of, but they're chasing their passion. So that might be the choice you want to follow. Just to give you a brief resume for those who don't know me. So I finished work at the end of February 2020. My wife finished at the age of 48. My wife finished work at the age of 55 on the 20th of March last year. We own a motorhome, which is what I'm sat in, and our plan was to travel around Europe for 12 months, then go to America for 6 months, then go to Australia and New Zealand for 6 months, and then travel around Europe again for another few months. That was in the spreadsheet. We finished on the 20th of March. We had our house rented out. We were camping on the drive of our house just before the tenant moved in, and we went into lockdown, and we were basically homeless. So by the kindness of friends, we ended up with a place to stay in Devon. So we had first lockdown, 15 weeks in Devon. And then once lockdown was eased, we managed to nip round, see all our family, and then we headed to France at the end of July to do what we had intended to do back in March. And we had just got back from that. So we had 6 months in France, including 6 weeks of very tight lockdown before Christmas in France. And we've travelled all around France and seen quite a lot of places, and that's what we've done. And now we're quarantining. I'm sat in a very glamorous location, which is a cul-de-sac in South Norfolk, sat on my mother's drive. So we're quarantining for 10 days, and then we'll be locked down here with my mother until things open up for all of us. So that's kind of the resume. It looks increasingly likely that we won't be going to America because of restrictions and vaccines and all that kind of stuff, or we won't be going this year. Maybe we'll go next year. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to share with you, which is something I've banged on about at networking events before, and I don't make no apology for it, especially applicable in life and business, is that the way to give yourself choices is to spend less than you earn. So in business, we call that making a profit, and in life, we call that having something to save. And so life is considerably less stressful if you spend less than you earn. The amount of time I saw business owners dedicating huge amounts of management time just to keeping the business afloat and finding money and juggling creditors and all those kind of things. So unless you're going to borrow heavily, spending less than you earn is definitely a route to success. And I would say that that's not just a function of how much you earn. So people like Nick will help you grow your top line, but you also need to control what's going out of your life stroke business as well, and live within your means. Because if you have a business that makes, in my experience, if you make more than 10% profit, life is a lot easier than if you're making less than 10% profit or a loss. And only people like Victoria Beckham or Philip Green seem to get away with making losses year after year after year. Normal people like us have to spend less than we earn. And if you have a surplus, either in the business or at home, you then are in a position to clear debt, which can be expensive, and then use it to pay for your financial future. So I won't go into all the details, but you need a little bit behind you in order to pay for day-to-day expenses, either in your business or life. But then having money invested will pay for your future. And so that living within your current means that you are able to provide for your future means. And by investing rather than putting it in the bank, whether that be in property or stocks and shares and pensions and things like that, then you have the opportunity to grow that money faster than inflation. If you put it in the bank, it will just get less in real terms than rather than grow. So clear your debt and then have that money invested somewhere. For me, that was stocks and shares, pensions and things. Other people have done property. Again, it depends on your risk profile and your personal interests and knowledge. It's incredibly easy to invest in stocks and shares. It's not difficult. It's made to appear difficult by some of the less scrupulous parts of the financial services industry. But with a good advisor who will help you with tax and all those kinds of things, and a bit of reading around the subject, you can do it yourself. Or be involved and manage it more closely. So number one, definitely spend less than you earn. The other second point, I think, is to actually understand your facts. So what was great is kind of the fact-finding process. So I used Helen, who's in the room, from my wife and I's financial planning, just not long before we retired. And we had an enormous exercise of her where she asked us 1,000,001 questions and helped us, being us and having a spreadsheet, we knew most of the answers, but it helped us identify all of the things that we needed to understand. And I would urge you to do that. So know what's coming in and what's going out. And also, particularly for those of you who are perhaps losing their hair like me, or it's going grey, nearer the retirement age, is to understand what you have in pension pots and things. Because a number of people I meet who just have no idea what their workplace pension from 20 years ago is, or where it's with, who it's with, what it's doing, all those kind of things. So just make sure you know all of your facts. And again, if you're in the business, knowing your numbers and understanding where you're making profits and losses and what resources you have is equally important. And also, which was the point of our big spreadsheet, was also have an idea of what you think you will need in the future. So understanding how much your current lifestyle costs and what that might cost in the future and what kind of things you want to do. So for us, we needed to know how much it was going to cost to go to America for 6 months, how much it was going to cost to go to Australia and New Zealand for 6 months. And having those kind of ideas gives you an idea of what kind of pot you need in order to make the choices you want to make later in life or in the future. So that's kind of an important part of the process. And my absolute top tip is don't be passive, take control and get to know stuff. The less scrupulous parts of the financial services industry rely on you being passive and sitting on your pot of money, taking their annual fees every year and nothing happening with it. So be active and just get to know your situation and use your financial advisors to manage your pot. I mean, AD right near the end, just before I started, was almost a perfect intro to me, because he was saying, well, you know, I help you manage your money so that it enables you to make the life choices you want to make. And that's exactly kind of my mantra. I'm trying to distinguish my prejudices about financial advisors from the people in the room by saying less scrupulous every time. I'm making the assumption that the people in the room are scrupulous and honest. I've met some that aren't. So I said about having facts about your pension pots or your savings or whatever. A big passion of mine is to have a pot. So I'm looking at the kind of screens, people like Aoife, who are deliciously young. There is no better time to start than now. I started when I was 22, and that's what allowed me to retire at 48. I didn't leave it because compounding works over a period of time, and the earlier you start, the bigger the return that you will have. And do something regularly over time. So I got rich slowly, effectively. So I never had a windfall. I didn't sell a business. I haven't had a big inheritance or anything like that. It's just my wife and I were lucky enough to have the good health and good fortune to work all for 30 years continuously, or 25 years, whatever it was. And we just put away a certain amount every month. And then over that time, it built up with fortune in investments. And that's what's got us in the position to do what we've done relatively early. So start early. The person I always have in mind when I think about having a pot is Forrest Gump. For those of you who've watched the movie. So Forrest Gump is able to run for 3 years, backwards and forwards across America. He's able to go off and invest in the shrimp boat in honor of Bubba and all these kind of things, because he had a pot behind him. Initially, it was the money he got for being a sponsor of a table tennis bat. And then he invested in a fruit company called Apple. And then he could live forever on the money that he had made. And that is what enables one to have those choices. We live in a capitalist society, so we need capital behind us in order to have those choices. So if you want to be like Forrest and run, then you need a pot behind you. The other thing that I have learned over the coaching business owners into selling their business and things, and also in our time, was planting a flag in the sand. So we chose my wife's 55th birthday because of the new pension rules, which allow you to access savings pots and things. And also it seems as good a time as any. I'm lucky enough to have married a woman older than me, so therefore I got to retire even earlier. But that flag in the sand really focused our attention on changed it from can we retire to how can we retire in 2020. And then we told an awful lot of people. A lot of people on this call say, yeah, a lot of people a lot of the time. But we kind of committed to it. It was something that we told a lot of people about. And so therefore we did what it took to get there. In coaching business owners, one of the things I always said was the biggest enemy of success is drift. So it can always be put off tomorrow. It can always be done. Oh, when I've done this, I'll do that and whatever. Whereas if you say, how do I get to here by that certain time, it really focuses the mind. And I learned from elite sport in that, because if you look at athletes, they have an Olympic cycle. They can't change that except this year with the pandemic. It's always 4 years, so they have to be ready. There's no ifs or buts. And so having a flag in the sand, I think, definitely focuses the mind. And it could be that you just want a flag in the sand to say, I want to be in a position of choice at 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, whatever it is. And then you can choose to carry on working. You can choose to do more, less, whatever. I spoke with Ian in the breakout group, Ian Mundy, and he said that he retired from the NHS and has never been busier because he's gone into working in a small business. And we all know what that feels like. There's no end to it. So it could be you made that choice, and that's great. I chose not to work. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. Okay, conscious of time. The other thing I'm passionate about is something that I call shedding, which is just getting rid of shit. So in life and business, we just accumulate crap the whole time, and that could be subscriptions, gym memberships that we never use, or the kind of emergence in the last decade of subscription economics, where people don't sell you products, they sell you packages every month and so on. And we end up buying things, paying for things that we don't use. Just shedding all of that crap, or shedding things that are expensive. We packed up our house in order to travel. I now live in an 11 square meter box. So this is my lounge, and there's my bedroom, and the kitchen is in between. So you can't take much crap with you. So it was an incredibly cleansing experience to just go from our 3-bedroomed house and throw out loads of shit. And we knew that anything we kept, we had to pay to store. So it just made us shed loads of stuff, both physical and financial. And then what you find is you don't need as much to live on. And so therefore your choices broaden. And I found that in business as well. My business went through a squeeze 2015, 2016, and when I was still in business with someone else, and we just went down every bill that we paid, and just asked the question: were we paying too much? Did we need to pay for it? And it was amazing what we shed in order to just make the business more streamlined. Because when times are good, you take on fat. Lockdown, and you need someone like Sarah to help you shed that fat. That would be my thing, is definitely shed the shit, because it's when you carry less, life is just easier. And what I found is that if you're not spending as much, personally, if you're not spending as much, then you have more left every month to invest, and you need less when you come to start drawing on that investment. So it's a win-win situation. And my final, you'll be pleased to hear, my final point is come up with a plan. So once you know what your flag in the sand is, and you know from your fact finding where it is that you are now, your plan is just how do you get from where you are now to where that flag in the sand is. It's not necessarily rocket science. But once you have that plan, work the plan. The number of people who spent good money with me coming up with business plans and then chose not to follow them is bizarre. Whereas it seems to be the natural human thing. I remember when I was a kid, you used to do GCSE revision timetables, and you'd spend all your revision time coming up with a neatly color-coded revision timetable and then never do any of the actual revision. And I think we can do that with businesses too. And so I would say work the plan. If you know you want to stop in 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is, turn that into annual goals, turn that into quarterly goals, and then I turn that into weekly and daily goals. And so I know every day what I need to do in order to sustain the lifestyle that I want for myself and for Bev. And I heard a brilliant phrase recently, which was that it was beginners are many, finishers are few. And so loads of people start stuff, but very few people complete stuff. And the thing is, if you come up with a plan, just work it. Clearly, the last 12 months has somewhat dented the world's faith in having plans, because my spreadsheet didn't have a global pandemic in it. But my spreadsheet got me to the point where I was flexible enough to make the most of the last 12 months, despite all the restrictions and everything else. And I'm very grateful for that. A lot of people say that that success is about discipline, and they say, oh, well, I'm not disciplined enough to do those kind of things. I don't think it is discipline, it's just habit. And I think there's a brilliant book called Atomic Habits by James Clear. Can't recommend it highly enough. I can see some people laughing at that because they've read it recently, I know. I highly recommend it. And it just means that you don't have to make the mental effort to make this stuff happen. It's just the system or the habits make it happen. And that has certainly worked for me. So that was a very, very rushed through kind of whistle-stop tour. I hope the document I provided gives you some other ideas. If anybody wants to talk to me, I don't earn a living now. I'm not paid. I'm not taking on coaching clients. That's not what I want in my life. But I'm really, really passionate about people having choices in life. So if you want to have a chat about the choices you're trying to make and all that kind of stuff, I'm willing to try and make that happen. My My mother, Freudian, my mother has given me a long job list now that I've arrived after 6 months. So I don't have unlimited time, but I do have some time. And if I can help anyone, I'd love to do it. So just connect with me and I'll see what I can do. My passion, as I say, is that people have choices. And if I can help someone do that, I'd love to do that. I have not lived a life I planned, but I have lived a life better than I dreamt. So I feel very fortunate. And if I can share something with some people, then I would love to do that. I'll leave you with the quote that's at the top of the handout. It comes from the very clever and very inspiring Professor Dumbledore, which is, "It is our choices that show what we truly are, not our abilities." I hope you are able to make small choices that then give you the big choices. I hope this has been useful. Thank you for having me. Stay safe and stay in touch.